I'm going to get started because I'm going to tell you guys, first and foremost, that this presentation I'm giving today is normally 45 minutes to an hour long, but I have 30. So I'm going to talk really fast, faster than I normally do. And I'm going to kind of consolidate some of it and give you as much as I can on the education part of it, all right? But to start, what I want to say is that most of the time when people think of business owners, they think they're uber wealthy, that they call all the shots, that everyone works for them. But the reality of it is that most of the time it's the exact opposite. Business owners work a ton of hours. Everyone else seems to get paid before they do. And nothing really ever seems to get done right unless they're the ones that are at the wheel, making sure that it gets done, right? You're nodding, you're like, I can relate. And if you can relate to that, it can be exhausting sometimes. And then what's worse, and some of you may have heard this statistic as well, but like 80 to 85% of all new businesses fail within the first 5 years. And I heard a statistic not too long ago that says those that make it past 5 years, half of those fail within the next 5. So by 10 years, probably 90% of them have failed. So you have to ask yourself, why in the world do people dream of owning their own business? And the answer to that is twofold. One, they don't know what they don't know, right? So they jump in, and I love entrepreneurs for that. They're just go-getters, they're hard workers, they're tenacious. They don't know there's a super high failure rate. And they also don't know what causes that failure, or that they're gonna be part of this 85% of the population that does the things that causes it to fail. Secondly, business ownership does provide the wealth and the personal freedom that people want. The problem is that most businesses and entrepreneurs start their business because they're really good at what they do, but they're not experts in business growth. And so what they end up doing most of the time is working really, really hard, spinning their wheels, and then eventually kind of throwing in the towel out of frustration or exhaustion or just running out of resources, right? And I know this firsthand. My name is Danette Grau Kohrs. I am I'm the founder and managing partner of Trinity Strategic Growth Solutions, and I am the co-developer of a program called Build It to Grow. And I'm a growthologist, which basically means that I love studying the science of business growth. But the thing that I'm most proud of is that I'm third generation entrepreneur. So my grandparents owned a bakery on Chippewa, full retail bakery, in the 50s through the 80s. And so my dad would take me in to work with him when I was like 9 years old. He would drag me out of bed at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And if any of you knew me, I am not a morning person. So I think that's what scarred me right then and there. It's like, hey, I don't want to get up at 5. I'll stay up till 5, but I don't want to get up at 5. So he would drag me in, and that was kind of the beginning of my entrepreneurial education, so to speak. And then when I was in high school, they bought a bakery in Morrison Woods. And so this was a little article that was done. And just to give you guys kind of a timestamp here, my little sisters are holding Cabbage Patch dolls, so it kind of tells you. And it's black and white too, so there you go. So after I graduated high school, I went to college and I got a degree in business and focused in marketing and advertising. And then I went to work for small businesses and I ran their business development departments. And I kind of started to see some trends and some same struggles and same problems. And then in 1999, I started Trinity. And I invested in a couple of franchise businesses over the next decade or so, and I started to see some patterns. And I started to put it together into a formula. What works, what doesn't, what order do you do it in? And then it kind of hit me and it said, hey,
Excuse me.
oh, hey, come on in, welcome.
Sorry, good.
Sure. It said, hey, all entrepreneurs really need to know this because it'll save them a decade or two of trial and error and heartache. And so I kind of put it together in a step-by-step formula, and that's what I want to show you guys today, is talk a little bit about the beginnings of that formula, kind of the foundation of it, all right? So I'm going to jump right in and do that. I'm going to let you know that if you would like a copy of the presentation today, if you text the letters BI2G, it's an acronym for Build It to Grow, to this text number right here, we will get that sent to you. Now, technology is like your best friend, and then it's your worst enemy sometimes, right? So earlier this week I had a presentation and all our requests came in, the first 2 worked, and then the system broke. So it hasn't been fixed yet, but I will text you this afternoon to get your email address so we can get it emailed. But if you just send that to me, I'll have your cell number, and then I'll text you personally to get that and send that to you, okay? So you guys have that, 314-300-0378 to get those slides. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what an ideal business is supposed to look like. Well, it grows easily. It's just kind of smooth. It's consistent. It looks like it does it all by itself. And it doesn't have a lot of cash flow problems, which means there's enough revenues coming in to pay expenses. And there's a healthy reserve that can pay if there's a dip, that can cover things if there's a dip in income or if there's maybe an increase in expenses. And it operates smoothly, which means everybody knows what they're supposed to do. They're getting it done. There's not a lot of fires. You're not always being reactive, but being more proactive, and it's controllable, which really means that you have a marketing program in place or a system that you can turn up when you can scale and you want more business, or you can turn it down when you have too much. All right, and so you are in control of that. So it's also consistent and increasing in profit. So the longer that the business owner owns the business, the more wealthier they become. It just keeps going consistently and predictably, and there's little to no direct day-to-day owner involvement, which means that the company can run without your day-to-day running, operating, delivering, doing the business, but it also means that it is not dependent upon any one person. We'll talk a little bit about that. So it's what I call autonomous. And it's attractive to investors because all of those things are in place, right? Investors would want to buy it, so if you should ever want to sell it, you're going to get a premium price for it, and you can sell it quickly, as we talked about. So that's what most people think about when they start a business. They think that's what my business is going to look like, right? Something's talking. Let's look at the reality of what really is going on, all right?
I'm on the way, 3768.
I guess that's just a part of their system. They have stuff that comes across their AV. All right, so 85%, as I mentioned before, of all new businesses do not survive. 10% of them survive, which basically means the owner is bringing in a decent income, paying the bills, but everything kind of hub and wheels around them. They're the ones that are doing it all. Everything is dependent upon them. And the business can only grow as much as the capacity of that owner, because they're the ones that are running the show. They're kind of the centralized computer system of everything that's going on. All right, and so this is kind of where an owner gets into the point where they're overwhelmed, they're working a ton of hours. The only way they can grow is to work more or work faster or work harder, or to cut corners to try to get things done, and then that starts to affect long-term growth. So if you do the math, what really is left is this 5%. 5% of all businesses reach that thrive, that ideal that we were just talking about, all those characteristics, right? So you have to wonder, what's the difference? Well, the biggest difference is that the owners that are the businesses and the entrepreneurs that own the thriving business versus those that are surviving or don't make it at all, is the ones that are surviving or not making it at all are running the business and working in the business instead of on the business. All right, that's the biggest difference. So there's two things that your job is if you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, and you want to have a thriving business that's profitable and growing, and that's to know and learn what you need to do to build and run a business like that. And drink of water here. Because you're not born a business owner. You're not born knowing how to run a business, right? You're not born a dentist. You're not born a super sleuth. You're not born a dentist, but or a financial advisor. You have to go to school and you have to learn that. So that's job number one. Learn what you need to know to build and run a thriving, profitable business. And then the second step is to take action, to apply what you learned into your business every single day. So why aren't more businesses successful? It seems pretty easy formula. Learn what you need to do and just do it, right? But the problem is that, as I mentioned before, most business owners and entrepreneurs are really good at what they do, but not all the other areas of their business. And so they get comfortable doing what you need to do. Plus, running a business is a lot of work. There's a lot of things to do, so it becomes time consuming, and it's difficult to step out of that role and take on this, what I call a growth-oriented business leader. So let's talk about the first one, which is learning what you need to know. Most business owners haven't learned that yet. So there's two ways to learn anything, right? First one's through trial and error, and the second one's for learning from someone else. So how do you guys think that entrepreneurs tend to learn new things? Trial and error, that's right. Because it's in their DNA, I think. I think that they're just driven. They're go-getters, they're tenacious, they're like, I can figure this out, right? And those things pay off for you overall in life. But they get you trapped inside of an entrepreneurial business, right? You have to step back and you have to tap into and learn from someone else, because you've got this big thing called time that's your enemy, right? Because especially if you've got a failure rate at 85% in the first 5 years, you better learn it fast in order to move forward and to get to that thrive, or at least survive and then to thrive. So you gotta learn it from someone else, right? So those are the two. All right, so we got 3 things that kind of trip entrepreneurs up on their way to learning and getting this right. And the first one's information overload. So today is worse than ever, right? Because we've got the internet, which I absolutely love because you can get like a semi-bachelor's degree in just about anything you want by just spending a few hours Googling and reading a bunch of articles. But you've got workshops, you've got binders, you've got seminars, you've got podcasts. You're gonna start doing podcasts to teach people stuff, right? You can bookmark this and bookmark that, but you got all this information, and it's very difficult to start going through that and discerning what's relevant to me, what should I apply, what should I do first, what should I do next, is this worth my time, is this gonna make a difference? So that first of all becomes very overwhelming, all right? Then you've got this thing called failure to implement, which basically means maybe you've got a plan, maybe you've got something that you want to do, and you know what you want to do it, but you just have so much going on that you never get around to doing it. All right, as a business owner in particular, it's so much easier that my mom used to always say the squeaky wheel gets oiled first, right? Right? So everything else is screaming at you, seems urgent and important, so you take care of those things and you don't get around to doing the things that drive the profitable growth. So that's a very common phenomenon as well. So when we laid out the Build It to Grow program, what I wanted to help entrepreneurs do was look at all of that information. I took it and I kind of laid it out in a step-by-step. Do this first, do this next, do that next, so it could be leveraged and it could cause profitable, sustainable growth, and put it that. And then added in this accountability factor, which just basically said, hey, entrepreneurs by themselves are so alone. First of all, you don't have anyone a lot of times to bounce ideas past and on. But secondly, you find that no one really knows what you're supposed to do, and they're not going to hold you accountable to it either. Your employees aren't going to be like calling you out on it, right? And they don't know in particular what you told yourself you're going to do that you never got around to. So this accountability piece is really important as well. So building that into your formula. So the first thing you want to do to start to build your company to grow and be profitable and to thrive is to build it to be scalable. Now, I spent 10 years working with a client that did merger and acquisition work. And the reason I did that was because I knew how to build a company organically, but I knew you could grow through acquisitions as well. But I didn't understand that world, and I wanted to know, why do companies buy and investors buy some companies and they don't buy others? And more than that, why do some businesses sell for big bucks and the owner's set for life, and other business owners just close their doors and they have nothing at the end? I wanted to understand that. Or worse, they close their doors and they've got a lot of debt. So what's the end? So I learned that when I worked in the merger and acquisition world. And what I found was that the things that make a company saleable are the things that make a company valuable. And if you're gonna own the company, and you own it, then don't you want it to be valuable and delivering all the things that an investor would want? So if nothing else, if you decide you wanna sell it someday, someone wants to buy it from you. So it's an income producing asset and not just a job. Make sense? All right, so let's talk about what has to happen, how you have to think and do things differently in order to have a company that's saleable. And you have to begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to go? If you're going to sell it, what's it going to look like? What is it going to be that somebody wants to buy? So you have to start thinking of your business as an investment and not a job. All right? And then you have to start thinking about profits, because that's what investors think about, profitability. Not salary, not income, not even revenues, but profitability. So that's very, very important. And then, and I tapped on this a little bit before, but you have to build it to grow and be profitable and think about that and not just run the day-to-day operations and deliver what your company does. You have to shift slowly. And it may not happen initially, but this is where you're going. That's the vision. That's the thinking differently. You guys have any questions? You're being really quiet. No? Okay. I'm going to keep zipping through. So, what does that look like? Well, it's scalable, which means that your company can deliver 2 widgets just as easily and smoothly as it can deliver 200. If everything kind of crashes and burns at 200, it's not scalable. So you have to be able to be scalable. Also, more predictable income, or predictable profit, which basically looks at it comes down to metrics, so knowing your numbers. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't like numbers, they don't like the financials, they just really love what they do, which is great. But the business ownership, to be successful, you have to look at numbers and get comfortable with metrics, because metrics actually, and this is where my nerdiness is going to come out, are fun, they're cool, they're like a crystal ball. They're going to tell you what's going to happen. So if you know you have X number of appointments in a sales environment are going to generate X number of leads, which will generate X number of revenues, which will generate X number of profits. It all trickles down. But if you don't know these numbers and you're not watching them and managing them, you won't know what your profits are until the end of the year when you do your tax return, and that's the only time you're really analyzing your revenues. So metrics is really how you drive your profitability and know what's going to happen. So you know if you have this many appointments, this is the revenue that's going to pop out, and here's the profitability that you're going to have. And then the last one is that autonomous that I talked about before, which means the business can run without you, most importantly, but without any one individual as well. So let's say you've built your business up, your daughter went to college, she just graduated, she's going to come back and run it for you, and you're like, woohoo, I'm going to go to Europe for 2 weeks because I've been dreaming about this forever. But she starts working for you, and you guys are butting heads, or she just gets a better job somewhere else and decides she doesn't want to work for you. Now you're back to square one. So you want to not be, you probably won't be able to replace that person overnight, but you want to be able to replace them relatively quickly and not be dependent upon any one person. All right, so the biggest thing in order to build a company that's saleable is to build it so that it's growing. If it's growing and it's profitable and it's scalable and it's autonomous, it can be sold. And if it's all those three things, then you will want to own it as well. And it's going to generate the personal wealth, and it's going to generate the personal freedom that everybody thinks the business is going to deliver for them. So the first step to do that is this franchise model. Now I'm going to stop because a lot of times people will say, I don't want to franchise my business, I don't have any interest in that. But a franchise isn't a type of business, it's a mode of operation. It's the way you run your business, right? So thinking that through, Ray Kroc 65 years ago saw that, and he totally took it and ran with it. And the McDonald's brothers founded McDonald's, but Ray Kroc saw what they were doing, and they were systematizing and assembly lining hamburgers. And he's like, wow, this is powerful, this is profitable, this is gonna make a lot of money. And he took it and he franchised it by duplicating it and cloning it. So you wanna start your business and run it so that you can just clone it if you wanna open a second location or a third location, or just run that one like clockwork, all right? That's the key. So let's talk a little bit about that, because here's the benefits of franchising. It's like I mentioned, it's a method of operation. It's a functional organization, which means you've got all these different functions within your business, and we're gonna talk about those. There's 8 of them, and you are managing and running it per function, not just, hey, it's day to day, this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna get it done, all right? You're looking at things at a functional level. You're documenting everything, all your tasks, all your workflows, who's responsible, how that transitions to the next person. You're thinking it all through strategically and systematically, and every business should really be set up, I believe, to follow this franchised or systemization model. So why do it? Well, you'll dramatically increase the value of your business. You can scale and grow much easier. You reduce your labor costs and the dependency on you, most importantly, as the owner, as well as any one individual. Risk goes down, because I told you 85% of all new businesses fail, but guess what? 85% of franchises succeed. It's a flipped rate. Well, why is that? Well, one, when you buy a franchise, you're buying a system in a box. They've already developed all their systems and their processes and protocols, and you're just following them. And you have to follow them to a T. The corporate office demands it, and oftentimes they write into their contract that if you don't, they'll take your franchise away from you. And they don't buy it back from you, they just take it from you. Because it's that important that you follow all their systems consistently and predictably, so that every location you go to is exactly the same. So when you go into McDonald's here or go into a McDonald's there, you know exactly what you're gonna get, right? It's gonna taste the same, it's gonna look the same, everything's the exact same customer experience. That's part of the value. And it's easier to hire, train, and develop your team. And then it can be sold faster, because this is what investors want. All right. The other thing that I like to talk about when I'm talking about this dependency on any one person is something called the hostage syndrome. Does anybody know what that is? That is when you have an employee who thinks they're so valuable and you need them so bad that you can't fire them. And they start to get kind of arrogant, they start bucking the system, and they don't follow the rules. So a lot of times that'll be the case, and you kind of just have to deal with it. But if you've got everything systematized and structured, you might bite the bullet a little bit, but you can say, hey, you know what? You are just replaceable. You're out of here. And you can bring someone else in to replace him. All All right, so step number one then is to get focused, because so many businesses try to do so many things and they ended up doing everything just kind of mediocre. What you want to do is do one thing that is very profitable and do it very, very well. So we have this niche builder, and inside of our Build It to Grow program, we spend a whole module talking about each one of these. But I got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to zip through this really, really quick because I got some really good stuff I want to share with you guys. The first one is your unique customer focus, which basically means, this is getting focused. What makes you unique in the marketplace? What do you do? How do you do it that's different than everyone else, even a direct competitor? And who is it that likes what you deliver and the way you deliver it? That's identifying how you're unique. Then you develop your sales message so that it's compelling to these people and it articulates that very, very well. And then the last piece of that is strategic attraction, which is going out and finding potential new customers who fit this model, who are intrigued by the message that you have to tell, and they all fit together. So that's focus. So I want to talk about building a business growth engine in your business, but to do that I want to kind of go through real quick these functions, because I mentioned functionality before when I talked about the franchise. A franchise, the better it is, the more of these business functions they have systematized and help you implement. And they tell you a really low level franchise, which costs less money, by the way, will just basically maybe tell you how to deliver whatever it is that they sell. But they'll let you figure all this out on your own. McDonald's, every single one of these they do. In fact, even like finance and asset protection, they tap into your registers every single day and they download your revenue numbers to their corporate office. You don't report them. 20 years ago, you would report your numbers to them, but they got smart because not all franchisees would tell them exactly how much they made, because then they have to pay a royalty off of that back to the corporate office. So now their systems are getting better at a corporate level, and they tap in, they know you're fine, and then they pull that money right out of your checking account, all right? So that's the way they work at the corporate level. But the better and more successful they are, they've documented all of this, and they tell you how to do every single one. But you pay more for those franchises. McDonald's is like 50 grand just to own a territory, and then it's probably $1 million to build out a restaurant, right? But the risk is very, very low because the failure rate's very, very low. And the franchisees that are the most successful are the ones that follow their system as close as possible. The ones that struggle are the ones that are like, I'll just do it my way. Why would you not do something that's proven to work? But sometimes people think, well, I want to be independent, I want to be flexible, I want to express my creativity. And that's where sometimes results start to slack. All right, so there's 4 of these functions that sustain business growth. And those are planning, team development, operations, and back office and finance and asset protection. And then there are 4 functions that drive growth, which is attraction, conversion, fulfillment, and customer development. So I want to talk with the time we have left about those 4 functions, the driving growth, or what I call the growth engine. So I use an engine analogy because in an engine you have all these different components and all of them have to work individually, but then they also all have to work together as a whole. And if one of them quit working, like if you get a hole in your fuel line, then you run out of gas and the car's not going to run anymore, right? Or if you run out of cooling system. And I'm not going to pretend that I know anything about cars, but I know that if a light comes on, I need to let my husband know and just stop driving it, right? So a business is the same way. You have all of these functions and they all need to be managed and maintained. And most business owners are really good at the fulfillment part, and that's all they spend all their energy on. Or maybe sales to get more business in. And all those other 6 that we looked at get ignored, right? All right, so here's the business growth engine. This right here is what we just looked at when we looked at focus. This is your unique fuel for your business, right? That feeds into what makes you different in the marketplace and who you're going to work with. So you start with attraction and you use that fuel to get, and here's the key, customers that are ideal and perfect for you. Not just any customer. You want to get customers that are ideal and perfect for what you do and how you do it. Those then feed into this function called conversion, because these are separate. Just because you get a lead doesn't mean you have a sale, right? So you need to do a whole lot of something right here to make sure that that lead eventually becomes a sale. And there's 2 parts to doing conversion very, very well. The first one is what we call a nurture process, which is building a relationship first and foremost with them. And the second part of that nurture process is educating your prospects and your existing customers on how to do business within your industry and what you do, so that you they make a good buying decision. And hopefully part of that education is compelling enough that they want to do business with you and not your competitors. And they want to do it at a competitive price so that you're not feeling like you have to cut price, right? Oftentimes if entrepreneurs run into where they feel like they're getting pressed to cut their prices all the time, their message, right here, their sales message isn't compelling enough. They're not articulating well why somebody should do business with them. All right, so when you have these two things going back and forth, you nurture them, they raise their hand, they're like, I might be interested in buying, tell me more. Boom, you pop them over here, you run your sales process, they kind of go away, maybe they don't buy yet, you put them back over here so you never lose them. And then you have a closed loop conversion, all right? And I could spend a lot more time on this because I'm really passionate about this whole conversion process and how to maximize that, but that's the key to it there. And then fulfillment is what? Delivering what you sell. Right? Doing that profitably is super important. A lot of entrepreneurs, because they don't like the numbers, they just are good at, painting homes or landscaping, and they just want to work on that and do a really good job, but they're not accounting for every expense that goes into delivering that or selling it or converting it. And so therefore they're underpricing themselves. So actually the more they grow, the less profitable they get because they're selling at a loss. So you need to and first and foremost, make sure that you're selling at a profitable level for every specific purpose and or account or client. And you'll get a little bit of money right there. All right, but you got to do it with a wow experience, which means that your customers walk away saying, that was phenomenal, and they tell other people you need to do business with them. You don't want the flip of that, which is they come in the front door smiling and go out the back door screaming, going, I'm never doing business with them again. And worse, they go tell all their friends, don't go back. Don't go to that restaurant. Don't do that. I call that anti-advertising, right? It's the exact opposite. So you definitely want to shoot for this wow experience. All right, and then the third piece then, and this is where most companies leave a lot of money on the table, is this development function. And this is where you get a big pot of gold because customers come back and they buy again. You upsell, you cross-sell, you generate this next piece, referrals out of them because they say, hey, come back. So referrals are a very, very lucrative lead generation source. But the reason this pot of gold is bigger is because when you deliver whatever it is you sell a second, third, or fourth time, it's not only this times two, but I also don't have attraction costs and I also do not have very much conversion costs that I had to eat on the first sale. That's why when you miss this piece, you really miss a lot of leverage and profitability in your business. So that's very important to put into play. All right, and then the last one there is the dashboard, which is all your metrics. You got to know where you're going and where you're at in order to know if you're going in the right direction. So there's a very specific order to doing all this because the logical thing says, hey, let's go from attraction through development, right? That's the sales process. Attract, convert, fulfill, develop. But there's a process. We're going to look at metrics and decide what's working, what's not. Then we're going to look at fulfillment and make sure we're doing everything great and wonderful and profitably. Then focus on developing and getting more what they call wallet share out of your existing customers before we go over and start to convert. Because when we focus on conversion next, we say, hey, if we got 100 leads coming in and we're only closing 3 of them, let's see what we can do by maybe building this out or doing both of these things better so that over time, now we close 5 of them or 10 of them or 20 of them. Because I'm going to pay X for these number of leads. So if I can push this number up, my return on investment for that dollar spent here is better. Plus, as everything pushes all the way through, now I'm going to keep more of them, retention rate, and they're going to come back and they're going to bring more and they're going to buy more. So their lifetime value goes up. So now everything is just far more profitable. Does this make sense? Excellent. So that's the last one. That's attraction. But here, this is where all businesses start when they want to grow. Let's go get more customers. Let's go get more leads. Let's do some advertising. And it's counterintuitive, but this is the formula. So this is called the growth engine. This is kind of a proprietary formula that we laid out. And this is the order that we focus in and this recommend that you do in order to really leverage and increase your profitability. All right, so your job is to systematize and optimize all of those functions in your business and to do it in a very specific order. Focus first on feedback and metrics, then fulfillment, then customer development, then conversion, and then attraction. But only do one at a time. We talked about focus earlier, right? Because you're gonna be like, I want to work on them all. But if you work in that order, you're gonna maximize. All right? So that's it. That's a quick run through of kind of this overview of how to build your company to grow consistently and profitably and how to think differently and do things differently. So you can either stay the status quo and not do anything, because if it's not broken, if you like the way things are going, then you don't want to fix what's not broken. or you can learn and do something different. It comes back to that trial and error. You can just jump in with trial and error and try to do it, or you can learn from someone else. So that's what we do. We help companies learn how to do that. And the rest of my presentation is just all about how we help people. And I don't have time, so I'm not gonna go through that. All I'm gonna tell you guys is that if you're interested, if you text to that same number, the word more, I'll email you some info on it, okay? And there's our website. So if you sent that already, then we'll be able to get your email address. And if you send more, I'll send you info. And that's it. I wanna take a couple of minutes to answer any questions you guys have.